Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Association of the United States Army's annual meeting and trade show in Washington, D.C. Our coverage here is sponsored by AM General, Elbit Systems of America, General Motors Hydrotech, L3 Technologies, and Leonardo DRS. And we're positively honored to have with us United States Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who's the commander of the United States Army Europe, one of the busiest people over the past couple of years in the whole U.S. Army. Sir, thanks very much for spending some time with us.
Vago, thanks. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity again.
It's always been a pleasure, I want to start off with the Zapad military exercises. We've spent years talking about this very issue. Zapad 17 was the largest Russian military exercise since the end of the Cold War. 100,000 troops in Belarus and in Russia, right along NATO's borders. Talk to us a little bit about, you watch Russia like a hawk. What are some of the top lessons learned from watching what the Russians managed to execute?
So General Scaparrotti, our commander, gave us good guidance. He said, during the Zapad exercise, we're going to do what professional militaries always do. We're going to train, we're going to do our normal rotations, almost business as usual, meaning being ready, but we're not going to be manning the parapets, doing anything that looked provocative or like sharks and jets in the alley, something like that. So, and that's exactly what we did. We exercises that were already scheduled, like the Swedish exercise Aurora, Polish exercise Dragon, exercise in Ukraine called Rapid Trident. We went through the rotation of the Armor Brigade Combat Team. 2nd Brigade, 1st Division came in on schedule, fought through 2 hurricanes to get there to Gdansk and replaced 3rd Brigade, 4th Division. So, really business as usual, professional military. And I think, and that was the stance for the entire alliance. It was exactly the right stance to take. Show the deterrence effect of the alliance. We'll be studying the forensics for a while, of course, but I had 3 major takeaways immediately. Number one, we were also focused, we the alliance and nations in the area were so focused on this exercise that we achieved a level of integration of intelligence sharing better than I've ever seen. And we want to keep that. All kinds of walls came down, really much better intelligence sharing. Secondly, our allies have a lot more confidence, I think, in the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group. NATO summit at Warsaw last summer, decision was made to do this in less than 1 year. All 4 EFP battle groups were formed and deployed ahead of Zapad. So really, I think everybody was pleased, like, wow, this EFP is really going to work. And then the third thing, I think a realization that we all have to be able to move quickly. When you see the size, the complexity of the Russian exercises, and Zapad really was a series of exercises, not one little place in Belarus. It was a series of exercises. It just reminded everybody that we have to be able to move quickly if you want to be able to prevent a crisis.
And what were some of the things they did? You've talked, the Russians did, you've talked about the electronic warfare, for example, which you at one point told me was eye-watering in terms of it. What were some of the takeaways about what they did that are making you reconsider what you're doing and your curriculum and what your successor is going to do?
So, first of all, we, the Alliance, we, the U.S. Land Forces, as part of U.S. European Command, I'm very confident that we're on the right path to make sure that we can achieve the highest level of deterrence, most effective level of deterrence. Focused on interoperability, focused on freedom of movement. The Army, is bringing over a fires brigade that'll give us 2 MLRS battalions, for example. The Army's working hard to improve our short-range air defense capability. The Army's working hard on helping us to be able to counter UAVs. I've seen some great technologies here at AUSA this week, in fact. The things that we saw the Russians do that will always, the things that we saw them do that will always be a challenge, that we have to be able to neutralize or counter. First, their ability to move a lot of stuff real far, real fast with their large transport aircraft. Of course, uninterrupted rail movements throughout Russia. That's important. We saw them up in Luga, which is up northwest corner of Russia, not too far from the Estonian border. their major training area where they focused a lot on long-range fires, artillery, rockets. That's always been at the core of how Russian forces have fought, and they've continued to work on that. A lot of UAVs. They have achieved a level of sophistication with their unmanned systems, aerial systems, that we have to be able to counter. I think the electronic warfare, this is an area where we're going to continue to study the forensics. You know, there were lots of reports about cell phones and in different countries going down. I can't and won't attribute that to Russian activity yet. I think this is one of the areas where we'll be studying.
You have been talking about, you mentioned some of the exercises that are going on. The Swedish exercise was an important one, the Polish one, and the Ukrainian one. And you've talked about, you know, the implementation, execution, and next year integration. Talk to us a little bit about how the nature of exercises that you're doing is changing so that you continue, the whole force continues to move up that continuum, whether for readiness or for capability. And talk to us about whether or not, and I've asked you this question before, whether the United States and its allies have to get back into that snap exercise mindset that you had as a young officer during the Cold War, where you guys had to pick up and move a large amount of equipment and to have a credible fighting force. You know, I was talking to some Air Force friends at AFA, and they were like, look, it was very usual where a wing was told, you're going to be in Germany next week, or tomorrow, everybody gets recalled, everybody goes over there, and that becomes credible because the Russians look at it and go, man, that was a lot of people, a lot of airplanes, a lot of assets that move quickly. Talk to us a little bit about whether that has a place, and then more generally, what's the kind of architecture, you know, what does the year of integration look like next year?
So we've adopted a fight tonight mentality at U.S. Army Europe as part of U.S. European Command, acknowledging that the likelihood of having a long warning ahead of some sort of crisis won't be there. That we'll have to be able to respond quickly. And so that affects your training. It affects what you do to make sure that all your troops and installations are ready for that sort of a requirement. So we have our own readiness test. We call it the Freedom Shock exercise series, where we will alert a Patriot battery or an infantry unit or a truck unit or somebody, send them off on a mission that tests readiness. Plus, obviously, we do telephonic alerts like we did when I was a lieutenant as well. So I'm actually quite pleased with the level of readiness for a short notice fight tonight type scenario. In fact, I've even had reports of company commanders in units shocking each other. Say, hey, I want you to test me before I get tested by U.S. Army Europe. So so guys are getting into it. They understand the need for it. Our Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group, which is built around 2nd Squadron and 2nd Cavalry in Northeast Poland, they live this. This is like being up on the old inter-German border, you know, General Defense Plan type mindset. Stuff's packed, echelon, vehicles ready to go in 4 hours, that kind of stuff. And of course, again, my commander, General Scaparrotti, has us in this sort of a mindset because we don't assume we'll have a lot of time. Now, for the exercise program, I think each year we're maturing, getting a little bit smarter of how do you get the most out of exercises that are there, take advantage of existing exercises and where we can pull them together into something that meets all the requirements, is joint, multi-echelon, has the degree of sophistication that we need. So maybe overall more exercising, less exercises. And I think that's what we're going to see more of in 2018, which I'm looking forward to. We call 2018 the year of integration. And by that, what I mean is we're going to double down on interoperability. We're going to look for everywhere we can to insert ourselves into a NATO exercise, into a joint exercise. Don't do anything that doesn't have allies in it. Don't do anything that doesn't have special forces, Air Force. That's what we mean by integration. One of our 3 enduring priorities at U.S. Army Europe is enhancing the alliance. So there's no point in doing something if we're not doing it with allies.